Kia ora. We've got the master, the retired man, Aaron Griffiths,
Hey,
back on the podcast. Mate, I made a doozy of the old time zones. Of course, you people up there in the north of Australia don't observe daylight saving. So
it's archaic. We're in the back country up here, mate.
but it was all right because I've spent the last half hour or so listening to the master Netsky himself. Managed to go to his gig a couple of weeks ago, the beauty of New Zealand, although
Nice.
we stuffed that up a little bit of late, but that's all right. We'll keep charging with things. Mate, we spoke in the deep, dark depths of what the hell was going on last year. How's the rest of it been, mate?
Yeah. So that
managed
would
to
have
retire.
been. Yeah. So that would have been after COVID hit, and I was at home from memory, and everything was higgledy-pickledy. There was a lot of uncertainty at the time. We
It was
didn't
about
know
April.
April, yeah. So yeah, that's when the wheels kind of fell off for me in 2020, to be honest. And I sort of spiraled downwards actually for a couple of months. It wasn't good. So yeah, because I was selling my law practice, which I'd created and had been running for 10 years. And I was due to settle that. I was under due diligence. I was under contract to sell it. I hadn't told anybody because, until you've got your due diligence completed, you don't want to go telling staff or clients or anyone like that until it's sort of locked in. So I was under contract, and COVID breaks when I was 2 weeks from the due diligence being completed. And so that just threw a spanner in the works. And I was supposed to be sold and out by May, and everything got put off, delayed. And of course, I took it a little personally. I was trying not to, but I felt like the universe was conspiring against me. All of those quotes about how, everything's happening for you, that all went out the window. And it was a rough time because it was just like so ridiculously unpredictable, and no one knew what was happening. So, and I had to keep this a secret, of course, for many, many months, until eventually things kind of became a little clearer and we were able to renegotiate. And so I didn't end up settling until September. And then I had a workout period for the new owners, which ended in late November. So from May to November, it wasn't that bad, but it was a bitter pill to swallow at the time because, as you can imagine, the process to sell a business is pretty lengthy by the time you prepare, list it, get it ready. You go through a few inquiries, you deal with different buyers, then you negotiate, then you go through due diligence. It's a very long process. So, yeah, I'm glad to be through it, and I'm glad to have 2020 behind me.
Yeah, man. So how big was your inner circle that you could offload some frustration to? And I bet with all that time, they probably got sick of you complaining. Was there a bit of that?
The complaining, geez, I really thought it was a bit humbling because I thought with the practices that I probably felt a little cocky, to be honest, because I'd had such a good run for such a long time. I felt indestructible. I thought with my meditation practice, with my ice baths, with my movement practice, everything was going so good. I was in a great relationship. I felt indestructible. And I guess it was a lesson. You can't get too cocky, and you can never be too confident either, or too sure of yourself. And so it derailed me a bit. And I did struggle. Even with those practices, and I went off the piss. I stopped drinking for 6 months because I thought, I'm struggling mentally. I'll just cut alcohol. So I was doing all the right things, and just nothing seemed to be bringing me relief. Like all of my normal tools just weren't working. So it was one of those ones where I had to just like hang in there and just grind it out. And I think too, the collective was going pretty chaotic. The community was, every time you look at the news, it was, there was a lot of fear, and I think that was affecting me. But I just had to hang in there, and there was a bit of complaining. I probably wasn't the nicest person to be around at times, but thankfully everybody hung in there for me, and I got through it. So yeah, it was a very long year, and I was stoked to make it through to November, and the final day was pretty euphoric. By the time it arrived, I'd be dreaming of it for so long, and so it finally happened, and it was a fairly euphoric day. And it was one of those Red Bull moments when you walk out the doors for the last time and you're almost flying, because you're so happy. So I got to experience that. And it was a conscious exit, and I hung in there. So unlike many of my previous sackings where I'm frog marched out of the building, it was a nice way to exit on good terms. So I'm proud of myself for turning over a new leaf there.
No, that's awesome, mate. Today on your Instagram, you sort of put up some posts around doing hardship, and it's funny that you sort of say about all your practices and things that you do to sort of balance out and give you perspective. Yeah, straight away took me, and I've actually ended up with like tears in my eyes. You straight away took me to doing the freaking 53K and just being in those moments of what the fuck am I doing? This is so dumb. This is so painful. Why am I here? What am I up to? You're not going to make it type stuff.
Yeah.
And how that feels. God, I can only semi-relate that there must have been some moments like that of like, oh, who do I turn to? I've got myself to blame for this. Well, what am I going to do? I'm such a strong person, but right now I'm grumbling.
Yeah. Oh, it's a test. I guess it was a real test for me of my mettle or my nerves. So I hadn't been put in that position before. I'd never sold a business before. It was my first business that I'd created and owned. Prior to that, I was only ever an employee. So, it was a matter of handing in your resignation and giving you 2 weeks or your 4 weeks notice. Or I was sacked and given no notice. Yeah. So previously, things ended quickly, but this was a very long, drawn out process. And I think too, I wanted to exit, consciously, and I wanted to create a good situation for myself to move into and transition into something new. So I knew I need capital for that. So, I wanted to try and maximize the most out of my efforts from the past 10 years. So, I wanted to sell it for good value and get something for my hassle. And that required a bit of sacrifice and a bit of rejigging and hanging in there. And especially through probably one of the most uncertain, weirdest times in modern history anyway, where it was with the economy, we just didn't know what was happening. It was all over the shop. And thankfully, by the time we settled and I handed over, the economy here, the local economy anyway, just blossomed, because the lockdowns in Melbourne pushed everybody up into Queensland, where I am. Everybody was escaping Melbourne. So we had this influx of people, which generated all this real estate business, and all the local businesses just started going berserk. The rental market went crazy. The property market went crazy. So everything bounced back with a vengeance, and I was able to hand it over in really good times. And it was very prosperous when I handed it over, which made me feel better, because you don't want to sort of, I'd worked really hard to build this thing, and you don't want to give something over as it's collapsing, because the whole economy is collapsing. So for my conscience, that felt really great, but it was a huge test. It was like doing your 53K. It was like doing your marathon. So extremely happy to get through it, and proud of myself for hanging in there.
Yeah. And I know you're sort of, like you said, all the things that, the mantras and stuff, about the universe taking care of things. What was doubt like, and how did you push through that? Oh, there must have been times where you thought, oh, maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. Maybe I'm supposed to stay with this, or something like that. That bargaining that goes on in your head.
Well, I think it was the uncertainty that was killing me, where, we just want to know our future. We want to know the path, and we want to know what's going to happen. But it became so unpredictable that was what I think was unhinging me. It was just none of that had ever happened before. I was in a totally new environment, and I just had to pretty much navigate each day. And there was a lot of patience because we had extension after extension with the contract. So I just had to sort of turn up and do my best with what I had to work with and write it out. And I think if you've ever been depressed and you've gotten through depression, you kind of know in the back of your mind that it will pass eventually. So just ride the snake, so to speak. And yeah, there was some pretty low, there were pretty low weeks, but you just got to do your best. And really, there's no choice. You know, I didn't feel like I had a choice. And you know, if the buyers had to turn around and said, "Oh no, the economy is too uncertain, we're gonna pull the pin," then I would have had to, you know, regroup, make some different decisions. But thankfully, you know, we just extended things, rejigged things, renegotiated things, and got through it. So in a way, I felt like I didn't have much of a choice other than to just sort of show up each day, check the news, see what was getting shut down or what was still open, and do your best with the playing field that you had, and just ride through it. So that was my approach. It was hard, but got through it, and it did come to an end, thankfully. And yeah, it was a very satisfying feeling getting across the line after you've been through, you know, an endurance event like that. So yeah, I was pleased to get through it.
Nice. And you said about patience there, you know, me at the other end of the spectrum trying to get into a practice, it's that balance of ambition and patience and finding the right time and I guess it's those sort of when things are out of your control, you start to get frustrated. And you know, you're at the other end, you know, so many other factors were out of your control. Like you said, at any moment the buyer could have said, "Oh no, we're out," and that's the sort of vulnerability I feel at my end of things, trying to be in practices. You know, maybe the current directors I work with will just be like, "Oh no, Ryan, you know, a couple of years," or "No, we don't want you as a director," or you know, all those sorts of things. But for me, I'm sort of going through the process of what's the worst that can happen. You know, it's life carries on, and he brought up the sort of being in depression. Now, I've only sort of really felt that once, and that was towards the end of uni, and it was not until I sort of took stock of where things were that I was like, shit, I was pretty down there that last year. Have you ever had any conscious experiences of depression? I don't know if you can have conscious depression, but
well, I mean, I felt so low at one point that I thought to myself, and I had, you know, friends and family around me go, "Yeah, I think you should probably go have a chat to someone." And so I kind of formed a self-diagnosis that I was depressed, and I went to the doctor, which at the time, you know, you had to wait in the car park, and he came out in a radioactive suit, and and he said to me, "Yeah, we had a chat," and I told him what was going on, and like I had formed also the preconception that doctors just hand out scripts for medication and just give me a script for some antidepressants. That's all you're going to do. And he sort of looked me in the eyes and he said, "You know what, Aaron? I don't think you're depressed. I think you're just going through a rough patch, mate." And it was kind of exactly what I needed to hear. And I think I was having a rough time. He said, "Look, what you've told me, anyone would be a bit bummed out that, you know, you've had this dream of selling your business and going on holidays, and you're supposed to be overseas right now, or traveling with your children, or doing all these great things, and that's not happened. So look, any reasonable person would feel a bit blue about that." So he didn't trivialize it, but he kind of lightened me up a little bit anyway. And I got a referral to see a psychologist, and I went to see her, and I had one session, and I just didn't. And I think in that session I realized, yeah, I don't actually need this. I'm good. And I went to see like a spiritual healer here on the coast, and I got probably the most out of that, which was alternative sort of therapies, where I don't even know, what she's doing. You're laying there. There's essential oils, there's feathers, there's crystals going off, but just a really soothing lady and a good conversation. And I left there just feeling incredible. And it was almost like this was all around the same time. So I went to see the doctor, the spiritual healer, and then the psychologist, and all in the 1 week. And it's just like it lifted. And I just came out of this, I guess, patch of melancholy. So, and then, I just cracked on and just got through it. And it was, there was lots of anticipation each day. So it's pretty adrenal year all around, but, just so satisfying when you get to the finish line. I can imagine like doing one of those endurance events. When you hit that finish line, it must just feel incredible.
Yeah, it was overwhelming was how I'd describe it. I was listening to Andrew Huberman talk about some things that are non-verbal, and you're saying like non-verbal stuff is kind of like surfing, and I think it's the same with ultra runners. They've got this crazy sort of connection to each other. You see it in CrossFit, and it sort of dawned on me that hunting is like that. You can't explain how freaking good it is, but when people that have done it look at each other and talk, say, you do that, they're like, oh yeah, you see it, and you see it in surfers, you see it in skaters, it's those real sort of crazy significant things that just sort of make people buzz out. And I'm sort of here listening to you and seeing the look on your face and trying to relate to what you've been through, and all I can find is analogies to what's going on. It just must have been massive. And again, when I was talking about that final year of university, I guess it was the same thing as your doctor said. It was this thing that I'd wanted to do since I was 12, and I was in the last year of it, and it was so significant, and there was so much riding on it. No wonder I was like packing myself and stressed and couldn't handle it. And when it was over, just like you said, it was so adrenal. What's November, December, January, February's gone now. Shit. What's it all been like? Like, where's the? Are you finding things to focus on and move forward to, or are you just really bathing in it?
Yeah, well, there was a decompression phase initially because I allowed myself a couple of months just to decompress. No agenda, no plan, and that freedom felt incredible because I'd been running this law firm for 10 years, which I created from scratch. So there's a lot of tension that is required to hold something like that together, a lot of responsibility. So to take that off, I think I felt 3 feet taller. I was walking around just lighter because I'd carried that weight for a significant period. And initially I just wanted to decompress. So that felt fantastic for a couple of months. And then I started to splurge into the space that I have and realized, okay, I need to create some boundaries and some structure for myself so that I crack into 2021 towards my new goals. So I've started to create a little bit of structure around my weeks now. I prioritize my children. I get to take them to jiu-jitsu now. I get to pick them up from school on certain days and drop them off to school, and things that I couldn't do previously because I was at work. I'm really enjoying those things. And I've implemented some structure just for my creative outlets and also my other practices that I'm still at, my movement, jiu-jitsu, my breathwork, meditation. So they're all very important. I've just started learning the didgeridoo. So I've kind of, did you ever see that movie about a boy with Hugh Grant, how he divides his day up into units of time? But he was all about leisure. So it was like snooker, 2 units, buying CDs, 3 units, shopping for shoes. So it's not quite that self-indulgent. I am trying to be creative and share some of the things that I've learned along the way, some of the tools. So I've been a bit more active on YouTube and social media, and I'm working on a new website at the moment. I've been doing a lot of writing, some art, and I'm in a brainstorming, research and development phase to create something new to offer the world with what I've learned going through my career and starting and running and selling a business. And a lot of the practices that I really got into were to offset the stress that business created for me, and going through a divorce and having some depression and some alcoholism, and I had a lot of stuff to get through. And so it's just interesting that pressure pushed me into these therapies that really brought me relief. So they're the things that interest me now, and I'm really passionate about trying to share those. So my new focus is all about those things. And at the moment, it's in a creation phase, and 2021 is all about just building something new and enjoying the space. So I've given myself this year to figure out something new and head in a totally new direction.
Nice, man. So you touched on creation there, and going from a very analytical, structured process of commercial law to now looking at website design, writing, as you said, art, music, playing around with video and structure and blending different cuts in and all that sort of stuff. And you've created some wicked graphics and things like that. What's the sort of courage like, and that sort of stepping out across the precipice each time to learn something new, to be a beginner? How does that sort of feel? And is it easy to get down on yourself and go, oh no, that's too hard?
Yeah, I think I've practiced it a lot now, so it's addictive. And that, I've just started the didgeridoo, so I've been at it for a few weeks. It is so frustrating. Like, it is so, but that feeling of being completely hopeless at something, like, that kind of activates something in me where I think, you know what, I'm going to get this, and I'm going to just stick at it. And I've done a few things now which were just felt impossible when I started, and then just through repetition and continued effort, you eventually get there. And I find that extremely satisfying to pour myself into fields that have a lot of depth, because when you can just do something easily first go, it just doesn't have the appeal. Like, I don't gravitate to those things, and I'm interested in things that are hard and that you can sink your teeth into and that take a long time to master. So there's endless possibilities and opportunities for that. So the hard thing is choosing, and I think you've got to really focus on what interests you, and that goes back to what you're into when you're a kid, really, and what did you like to do. And so law for me was a pathway, I think, that was somewhat programmed into me, and security was a big reason to get a profession and get something that would get you some social status and some respect and be lucrative. And so these are all the reasons why you can pursue a career like law. And for me, that's why if I'm honest, that's why I pursued that field. So you've got these creative urges that maybe at school you did like art, or you did like sports, or you did like creating artistically or writing creatively, and you find yourself in a very left brain, monotonous office cubicle where you're not those parts of you that are just yearning for, yearning to be activated and yearning to be exercised, aren't. And it becomes overwhelming. And I think you can feel like a rat in a cage. And I just had to get out. So, to be able to do these things now and to have the time and the space, I wake up every day just feeling so blessed, so happy. And if I ever do get worried about anything, I just remind myself that man, you're free. Like, you could do whatever you want today. And this is a rare opportunity. And you don't get these chances too often in life. So I'm making the most of it. And every day, it's just a chance to create something beautiful that I want to share with the world. And there's no pressure right now. So it's fantastic. I'm loving every day. And it's just a stark contrast to, that 9 to 5 grind that I was in for so long. So very, very grateful.
So you gave us a great Nirvana reference there. What was the rage?
The rage.
Yeah, so despite
Rage
all your
Against
rage,
the Machine.
no, despite all your rage, you're still just a rat in a cage.
Oh, the rat in the cage. That was Smashing Pumpkins, wasn't it?
Oh, Smashing Pumpkins. Yes, you're right. Shit.
Smashing Pumpkins. I think
right.
I'm mixing up my 90s grunge bands.
Yeah. So what was the rage that you were suppressing down while you were that rat in the cage?
Oh, geez. I think it's a combination of things. The PC culture that's overtaken the world. As a man in an office environment, in a white collar environment, the demasculation of men, which is probably going to be a sensitive topic for some, but the watering down of masculinity, where it's harder and harder to be yourself in some ways. If you are athletic and outdoors orientated, being in a cubicle is, for long periods, lawyers are renowned for long hours at a desk. So that can be very unhealthy. Self-medicating with cocaine, alcohol, ecstasy, whatever illicit drugs takes your fancy to relieve the pain that you're in, because it's not satisfying a part of you. So there's numbing agents that are required to offset the stress. All of this, it's a combination of all of those things, and maybe being a square peg in a round hole as well, where you don't feel like you quite fit in. That can be challenging. So all of those things can make you feel like a rat in a cage, and it can make you feel crazy some weeks. So I look out the window sometimes and see a gardener on the grass trimming the trees, and just think, man, I wouldn't mind trading places with you just to feel that sun on my skin or the fresh breeze, on my face. So I sort of thought to myself a few times, like, who's got it right here? Did I make the right choice? Or, did the gardener out there who had the smile on his face make the better choice? So all of those feelings generated some desire to get out for me. And thankfully I was able to do that consciously and in a positive way, rather than just completely self-destructing. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, man. No, I just had, I don't know if you're familiar with Monty Python, but they got this skit called the Four Yorkshiremen, and they just basically keep complaining worse and worse about their situation in life. And and one of them is, you just said about staring at the window, as an optometrist, it's, oh, mate, a window, luxury. We live in we're in a dark room. But yeah, I had one of those moments that I think that's why I love the NZ Farming Instagram page so much, because I just, watch these snippets of people, herding sheep or moving deer or whatever. And it's like, I was thinking, like, I wonder what the salary is like on it as a deer shepherd at the moment.
The grass is always greener, as they say.
That's right.
Every industry has its challenges, but I guess if you have certain natural desires, or just natural preferences, and you go against those, you're setting yourself up for a pretty suffocating career and you can overlook those things or push them down for so long. But I think as you get older, you start to appreciate those qualities more and more and think, you know what, I think I'd rather nurture those qualities and honor those within myself rather than just keep pushing and suppressing and, you know, taking these paths for other people or for social status or just for the money. Maybe it would be an idea to try something that engaged these natural propensities and brought out those natural preferences, and maybe I'd flourish even more if I did something that honored those qualities. So I just couldn't get that idea out of my head, and I just thought, you know what, I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna sell the business and try and do something different. And after 10 years too, I felt pretty saturated. And if I look back on the life cycle of my business, it took me really, you know, everyone says it takes 5 years to create a business. And I think that's pretty accurate. There's outliers, of course, that just nail it and have freakish, you know, starts out of the blocks. But for me, it really did take 5 years. And the first two are pretty adrenal because you're on the edge of failure the whole time. But looking back over a decade, they were the funnest years because the adrenaline's pumping. And I mean, they're scary, but they were so much fun because that is the creation. And if I'm honest, they were the most enjoyable, even though they were the least lucrative for me. So I just love that building phase and having to make it work. So that pressure was excellent for me. And then, you know, it was nice to get through that. And, you know, as you approach that 4 to sort of 6 years was when I probably peaked and things got comfortable and your systems are in place and you've got your staff or your crew or your client base and the work's repeating. You don't have to work as hard to get it in. And that was very comfortable. But then I started to get bored because it wasn't exciting anymore. And then, the last 3 years were more like a ramp sort of out rather than, I think I was just done and had enough of it. So I was grateful to get out and now it's time to do something new.
How much is the sort of relationship building in that commercial law side? Like the beautiful thing for me in optometry is the relationships that you build. And like I spoke about in the last podcast, you know, that's really what our profession is about, these relationships that we build over 20, you know, maybe even 40 years. You might follow someone up, like, you know, I saw a 4-year-old today, you know, and that person might be my patient for the next, you know, so long, which is amazing. But, you know, what's it like when you're the one that writes it all down and finalizes everything? And I know my experience, the few experience I've had with lawyers, I just want to get out of there and write my name and leave. What sort of situation are you able to foster in that sector?
Yeah, very important. And essentially, there's a great book.
There's a lot of trust there, eh?
There is. It's all trust. I read a book recently about Beautiful Constraints, it was called, and it made me reflect on the entry into my business was during the GFC, and I was made redundant from, you know, my stable job at another law firm. I was an employee there. My wife had just been in a critical car accident 2 weeks prior, and she was off work. She was in a critical condition in hospital. 2 weeks later, I got made redundant from that job. So we went from being a young professional couple with two, you know, reasonable incomes to zero income and a mortgage. And we just built an investment property. So we just taken on a second mortgage.
Jesus.
And so it was a really hectic time and there was a bit of scrambling involved. And the reason I started the business was because, one, there were no jobs. And so I kind of had to. And two, I needed to be able to take my wife to appointments and, well, be there for her while she recovered. She was in hospital for many months, and then there was a lengthy rehab process. So she was at home and just needed some support. So I started the business from home in my living room on my laptop, with a few $1,000s, basically. And those constraints make you, there's no marketing budget. There's no, I'm going to have a box at Suncorp Stadium and wine and dine people. It's all, how do I give value to people? How am I going to win business? And shockingly, just being a nice human being and calling people or dropping in and seeing people is not very well practiced, and it's uncommon behavior. So I just found those little things built those relationships. And it was just, I just literally started going to as many meetings as I could, any networking event, I went to it, and I just target one or two people and just get to know them and chat to them, follow them up, drop into their place of business, say good day, and just build rapport. And that's really all I could do because I had limited funding. I wasn't going to go on a crazy advertising campaign and put my face on the side of the local buses or on the back of the taxis or anything. So it was all relationship building. And the other thing I saw in the human beings that became my clients or referral partners was they want to support young, hungry players. And people were generous to me and they gave me a chance. And I think they sense that hunger, and they sense that they're going to get great value out of you, particularly when you're starting, because you tend to over deliver because you got time. And yeah, I look back on those lucky clients in that first year or two, and they got so much for cheap, really. So they were happy. And, you know, you have to adjust that over time, of course, but it was basically all relationship building. So lots of phone calls, lots of meetings, lots of coffees, lots of going for walks with people. I mean, I even got downhill mountain biking at one point just to meet some people who were into that. And they invited me along, and I previously, you know, didn't have a mountain bike. I wasn't that interested, but got into it just to kind of get involved and get amongst it. And it turned out to be a really effective tactic. And that's essentially how I created the business.
And so you brought up a big topic there, networks. And that's sort of, with most things, you sort of find that word of mouth is massive. When you look at your referrals, like say referral partners and things, word of mouth is where things come involved. Now that you've left that profession, what sort of things do you find in your network now, like a sort of sounding board or a place that you know to get things done, or what, you know, what's the sort of value of the network now that it's not commercial?
My current network, outside of law, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess it's become a lot of people in the movement community that I'm friends with, different mentors, different teachers, family who I trust. I've got a pretty small circle, so having a few close confidants or people that you can bounce stuff off, because it's really hard to be objective when it comes to your own life, and you really do need to bounce things off other people, because it's that proverb of not seeing the wood through the trees. You know, it's really hard to be objective about yourself. So it's very, very valuable to ask other people for their opinion. And I really enjoy people who don't agree with me. I really enjoy conflicting approaches to life and people who challenge me, because it forces me to see things differently. And I've got one or two friends who do things I don't agree with a lot of. You know, I don't necessarily agree with their approaches at times. And I think, why would you do that? You're crazy. But at the same time, I love it, because they're just looking at stuff through a completely different lens. And I find that refreshing. And yeah, it forces me to not be so mono-focused, and it can open your mind up to the possibilities of how to go about things, and there's no one set way. And so that's very, very valuable to have varied opinions and varied advisors. And you don't have to take the advice of people, they offer you an opinion and their advice, and you think about it, and sometimes it's good. Okay, I agree with that and I'll do that. And other times it's bad and no way, I'm not doing that. So I think it's good to have a mix.
Yeah, no, it's I especially like that varied approach from other people, and Joker and I in that last one, sort of talking about Elon Musk, and you look at the things he's achieved or tried to achieve, or committed to his ambition to, and you go, well, what is it about that guy? What is he doing? What is he giving up? And where's he focused? And Joker kind of thought that it was massive action, and it's that, again, sayings, you can have all the ideas you want, but without action, nothing ever happens. So, where do you find that will, that courage to take action on these things now when you've got so many opportunities?
I think I did a post about this very concept today, where I find I've really reinvigorated myself with the ice baths. I've got an ice tank here at home, a chest freezer that I've converted into an ice bath, and I really hate the cold, and I find it extremely hard. I've been doing it for about 3 years now at home here, but it just never gets easier for me. Like, it's always horrible getting in, but there's something so empowering about getting in and enduring a few minutes in the ice. So I think those sorts of practices unlock that courage aspect of the psyche, where, well, if I can do that, I can ask this beautiful girl out on a date, or which is something that creates a similar anxiety to getting into an ice bath for some people. It does for me. And so, you pluck up the courage to go and do these hard things, and, you might get rejected, or she might say yes and come out with you on a date. So that might be nice. I've been doing jiu-jitsu for the last 4 years, and it's very intimidating culture and environment for me. And I've never been a fighter, and I've always found conflict difficult. And so I think after I started doing ice baths, it sort of gave me the confidence to go and do these things. And I started booking trips, surfing in Indonesia, and just doing these things that I'd always wanted to do, but I'd put off because of this, made excuses, or let sort of procrastination and fear get in the way. So those sorts of practices, like the ice baths, I think have unlocked that part in me that give me permission to do these hard things. Yes, they're terrifying. Yes, it's very, very uncomfortable, but I'm going to go and do it anyway. And the satisfaction of getting through that fear is what makes them addictive, I think. So, yeah, there's a really great universal application to those practices that you can transition into other fields. So I think it's just practice. And once you get confidence and experience doing it, you can start to transfer it into multiple facets of your life. And before you know it, you're building this sort of body of work that all relies on the same sort of universal principle, which is, yes, it's scary. I acknowledge it's terrifying, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to prepare as best I can and just see what happens.
Yeah, man. I think that's like all the things you're passionate about. Like you said, looking back when you on your childhood, like what did I dream of doing? And then it's kind of like, well, I've done this one thing that I thought, oh, maybe I want to do that, and then I did it, and then I reaped the reward of it. What if I just did that again on this next one? Like you say, you always wanted to go surfing in Indonesia, and you came up with the 101 reasons why that's a bad idea. It costs too much. You might cane yourself on the reef. You might die. You might, something might happen to you in Indonesia before you've even gone surfing. Like, oh, so why would I do that? But it's the same like going on a Wim Hof retreat with Wim Hof. Like, oh, he's a big deal. I'm going to be out of place. But no, you went and did that. you had an incredible experience. Now you've got a tool for life. You understand it. You can reap the rewards of it. Even when you don't have a great Wim Hof experience, you still have a great Wim Hof experience. And then so it's like, no, I am going to go book that flight, pack my surfboard and go to Indonesia. And then once again, you got another thing, and it starts to build on it, and you start creating these things that you're passionate about. And it's funny, like for me, one of those things is going hunting in Fiordland to go hunt wapiti in these incredible landscape. And it's kind of like, I don't know right now how I would do that, but I know if I win one of those ballots, I will go and do that. And it's almost like putting the cart before the horse. It was a bit like with the ultra marathon. It was like something since being a child that I thought, oh yeah, I'd love to do an endurance event. But you just got to enter, and then it's like, well, now I've got to do it, I guess. And front loading it, like entering these events, you got to front up with some cash or something, and it's like, shit, now I really want to do a good job of this, so I'm going to do it, and so you get this momentum going.
Yes.
It's exactly what you said about like the one thing, that basic principle of the courage to take the step creates so much for your life. And I love what you said about a body of work. Where does that sort of come from, that idea of creating a body of work?
I think you want your life to be a masterpiece, don't you? You want it to be have layers and have facets, and I like the idea of having multiple interests and having a multidisciplinary approach. And I do admire specialists that can just do one thing all the time, and there's a place for them. But yeah, I really like the idea of having some variety and but in fields that have depth. So yeah, and I think it's because I enjoy learning, and I just want to experience different crafts. And I think you make your bucket list. Who wouldn't want to learn to play a musical instrument or speak another language, or do some travel, or everybody's got these dreams. So why not look at your life as a body of work and a masterpiece that you can play with? And so I think it's compounding interest when you start to do one thing, and empowers you to do the next and the next. And, before you know it, you've got some diversity in your life. And I find that extremely nourishing, rather than just being, and I think that's the danger of getting trapped in an office, in a cubicle for too long, where, and I was very fortunate to, well, I don't know if you'd call it fortunate, but just doing that over and over and over, and turning to alcohol for relief, caused me significant problems, led to the breakdown of my marriage. You go through a divorce. It's very, very painful. But then the lesson in that is, this isn't a healthy existence. I need more than this. Just my job and my identity as a lawyer isn't making me happy. So I need other things. And that's when I started to bring in the ice baths and some breath work and some meditation and some movement. And all of a sudden I had these other things to focus on, which brought me tremendous relief, and started to create this body of work, rather than just being stuck in this one lane that was become toxic and unhealthy. It had turned on me. So I think that's a better approach. And everybody's free to write their own book, and why not make it an exciting one?
Yeah, man. You've brought up some interesting language there. You sort of said about a masterpiece, and you want to follow things with depth. And earlier you said around what that depth for you means is mastery, and you especially have that with martial arts, those levels of mastery until you reach the ultimate goal of black belt, say. But even then, it's not over. There's always lessons to be had. So I think it's an awesome way that you've described things, and it fits in well with, it's congruent with what you're saying.
Yeah. And like I said before, when you start down some of these disciplines, especially when you get a few years in, you realize that it's the start is usually the most enjoyable process, even though it's really frustrating. You get good gains in things. So you make rapid progress where maybe you're learning to handstand and you make progress relatively quickly and it's exciting. And once you can balance on your hands and you get a 10-second handstand, it's so rewarding. But then when you get to the middle stages where, from 40 to 50 seconds or from 50 to 60 seconds, it's the return on investment gets skinnier and skinnier. So it's a different zone, which is also enjoyable in a different context. But yeah, starting new things is so much fun for that reason, because of the excitement and the gains and the novelty. So I really enjoy trying new things for that reason. So I think it's good to be a beginner all the time and always be doing something that is fresh and new for your neuroplasticity as well. Like, it's good for your brain. It challenges your brain, and it's gratifying because you make rapid progress. So it's good to have in the arsenal just something that you completely suck at all the time. I think you've got to have something that you completely suck at, every week. And then it's good to have things that you're good at too. But I think that's super important for the mix.
Yeah, no. Thankfully, life throws those things that we suck at each day. But I don't know, the sort of mindset flip of that is that that's an opportunity for exactly what you talked about, those moments of enjoyment and excitement of just conquering that little bit. Like that can be sort of the mindset shift that you have about those experiences. Again, making things parallel to the rest of your life. Remember that those little gains are the most exciting, especially when you look back on it. So when you are having a tough time, when you are struggling, when you're trying to just get 1 foot up, that's where the massive joy lies.
I learned to surf as an adult, and which it's a very hard sport to learn. And it's very hard, especially it's almost impossible to learn on your own. Like, you almost, because it sucks so much. You're drowning, you're getting hit by boards, other people are angry at you.
Could you swim?
You're getting stung by things, you're getting sunburnt, you hit the rocks, you fall over, you cut yourself on the fins, getting banged around, you feel like you're going to drown, you can't do it. It's one of the most frustrating sports to learn as an adult. But that first green wave that you get, when you'll never forget it, the feeling of actually riding the wave for the first time, when you stand up and you're going along the wave, and it's so exciting, it's just exhilarating. And in many ways, it can never be duplicated. It can never be, I don't know if you can ever get that stoked ever again. And like, the truth is, you look like a Gumby, you're all stiff and you're just barely hanging on to it, and it only lasts for a couple of seconds maybe, but it's such a euphoric moment, it's such a milestone, and it's so rewarding. And I'm really jealous when I see beginners now and you see them about to have that moment, or they have it, and you're stoked for them because you know how good it felt. So yeah, it's I'm always looking for that first wave in things, and because it's so enriching, it's so valuable. So yeah, I think it's good to always have something that's new.
Looking for that first wave. I love that. Could you swim when you learned how to surf?
Yeah, I could swim. I'm not a very strong swimmer, but I've sort of grown up around the beach, so I've been in and out of the surf. But yeah, I was in my 20s, mid 20s when I learnt to surf. So, and you've got these 10-year-olds, if you if you move to a coastal community, you got 10-year-olds that can shred, and they're paying you out, and there's some aggression in the water too. I'm not sure what it's like over here, but it's pretty crowded at certain locations here. And typically you want to learn at the points where the waves are a bit more rolly and they're a bit more organized. And a bit easier to sort of paddle into, but that's where all the crowds go. So you cop the most abuse there, which is sort of paradoxical, because the places as a beginner where you need to go to surf, where the waves are the friendliest, that's where everyone is. And that's the hardest place to learn. So, yeah, it was so frustrating, but thankfully I had a mate who was already a good surfer, and I don't think I would have got through it without his encouragement. He also laughed at me quite a lot and gave me a hard time, but I think it was because of him that I actually pushed through that horrible frustration in the beginning. These days, I'm a bit more stoic on myself, and but I think a good buddy or a good training partner, so valuable.
Right, I'm writing that down. Find a good buddy to go surfing. I've tried longboard a few times at a reasonably rolling wave. I've had sort of a two-second ride, and I sort of wonder, is it, all this time sort of body surfing and swimming and bodyboarding, is it put me in bad stead or something, or is it just got to get out of my own way and just let somebody guide me? I think that you've given me some advice, so I'll take that one on board next time I try go surfing, because you're right, I'm in search of that first wave, and not just in surfing, but yeah, that sounds really good. Bit of advice: search for the first wave and find a mentor, even if they do laugh at you a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, mate. So we've touched a little bit, danced around the edges of the YouTube and movement. What's up there so far? How's it all going, mate? And what's the experience been like?
Yeah, it's been good. I mean, I've been playing around with YouTube lately. So I created a channel during COVID last year when I had a bit more time because I was at home more, and I just wanted to start sharing my movement practice, some of the breath work that I've been doing, and a bit of the ice baths and that sort of thing. And I just wanted to get comfortable creating video and being in front of the camera and the production side of it, because I'd never used any sort of video editing software or cameras or anything like that. So I found again, this is something new to sink my teeth into, and yeah, it's been really enjoyable. And I like to think it's helping people. So I've had some good feedback from people who are interested in movement, in particular, because I've tried to touch on things where it might be hard to get free information at the moment in areas of movement, locomotion and soft acrobatics, that sort of thing. So I'm relatively self-taught, but I've had some online coaching myself last year. So I wanted to share some of that with people just to generate some interest and give people some extra resources or some inspiration or some ideas to help them get started. And if they want to work out from home, or, even if they want to go into the gym, but a lot of body weight stuff, some acrobatics and calisthenics, some hand balancing, that sort of thing. So it's been really fun.
And one of the videos you sort of made was about that whole experience of online training. Was that right?
Yeah, I made a video about my experiences trying different online training systems. So I've probably tried, maybe a dozen or so now. I touched on probably 6 or 8 different trainers and websites that I've used to develop a movement practice, particularly around bodyweight strength, gymnastic strength training, and hand balancing and locomotion, soft acrobatics, which are all areas of interest to me because I'll be 40 in a couple of months, and I wanted practices that I could do long term. So I wanted to, find out things that had some longevity that I could keep doing. You know, I used to play rugby like yourself, which you sort of have an expiry date for that sport. And for me, it was, I think it's about 27 when I got shoulder charged by a rather large heavyweight prop and dislocated my shoulder, and I just never went back to it. The injuries and the risk profile just didn't really suit my lifestyle anymore as much as I love the sport. So finding other ways to move that have some expression and some joy and some fun, but are also really healthy, keep you in shape, and like hand balancing in itself is just a rabbit hole you can go down on its own. But there's all these different disciplines within movement that you can incorporate into your own practice. And I just find it a really enjoyable way to go about physical exercise, because just like rugby, you're kind of distracted from the fact that you're exercising. I think I kind of need that a little bit. If you ask me to just do burpees, I kind of really struggle with that these days. I kind of need to be a little distracted. So I find the soft acrobatics is a little bit more dance orientated, or there's a lot of coordination to it, and you're really focusing on, your coordination and where you're placing your hands and feet and which way you're bending and twisting and flipping. So I really like that it has that quality to it. And jiu-jitsu, of course, is something that I've added in too. And again, you're sort of distracted by the fact that you're trying to survive. You forget that you're exercising. So yeah, I like those qualities.
Is there sort of, I've never been to a BJJ gym. Is there sort of music or noise, or is it just people slapping as they hit the deck and grunting and rolling around?
Yeah, I think all the gyms are different, but the Brazilian culture is very relaxed and it's very friendly. So unlike other martial arts, they're not overly strict on, if you rock up late, or there's respect, but it's not anal. And at my gym, one of the coaches anyway, he loves heavy metal, and he's from the UK, and he always plays, when his favorite band, he's got tattoos of the Prodigy symbols on his shoulders, and he loves the Prodigy. And when Breathe, I think, is the song that by the Prodigy, when that comes on, he usually puts us through this horrendous conditioning circuit to warm up. So there's jams playing, and while we're rolling, there's jams going on. And so, it's a really fun environment. It's very cool, very social, very relaxed. Everyone trains hard though. And, there's people are there for different reasons. Some people want to be competitors, and you got sort of weekend warriors like me, or corporate types, and men, women, kids. It's such a mixed, very demographic. There's engineers and pilots and doctors and lawyers, and then there's truck drivers and guys in the mines, and diesel fitters and
awesome
mechanics, and it's a real blended family.
Yeah, it's funny you're talking about the Brazilians' casual attitude. I was listening to Rogan the other day wax lyrically about the Gracies, and he brought up that sort of capoeira element, which of course is, I guess it's like fight dancing to music and beats and things like that. So it's not surprising that there's that sort of musical element to things. And you do the same when you're in the flow of movement practicing. Do you sort of chuck on some tunes and are you sort of rhythmic, or are you a bit more aggressive?
No, it makes a huge difference, especially with some of the acrobatics and the locomotion and soft acrobatics. Music, there's a rhythm to it. There's a rhythm to your movement, and a good beat really helps with your rhythm and your timing. So, I've got some playlists that I just revert to, and it helps tremendously. And, it can set the mood. Music has a vibration. It's an energy, so it can really enhance the experience. And now whenever I hear, Breathe by The Prodigy, I almost get a cold shiver because I know it means a really hard conditioning circuit. So it starts to link in your mind to certain activities. So music's very powerful. I'd say underestimated. And capoeira, I've not really taken any formal classes, but I love the fact that there's live music going on while you're doing it. All those really cool Brazilian instruments and drums. And I'd love to. Could you imagine playing rugby and having like Metallica just jamming on the side of the field while you're playing? Like, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, man. I think that's what why when teams go and play in Argentina, despite the fact that they might whip them, well, used to, not anymore, but back in the day when they used to might whip them at home, but then they go to Buenos Aires or whatever and be a real struggle and they draw or win by 1 point and things like that. Just because of the sheer noise, the Boca Juniors crowd, showing up for a rugby match, being like, yeah, get the tunes and the drums and everything going on. Like, obviously Argentinian, but very similar to, but not to Brazilian.
Well, I don't know about you, but I remember when COVID hit, when they did return to playing sporting matches like AFL or rugby league or rugby union, and there were no crowds.
Yeah, the fake crowd
allowed
noise.
Initially, and I found it really unenjoyable. I didn't realize just how much the crowd influences my enjoyment viewing a sport. The crowd creates an atmosphere, it creates an energy, and it has a musicality to itself. And it was really sort of dull, when you put a game on and something's missing here, something's not right. And it was the crowd was missing.
Yeah, and it's funny, like, one of my favorite A-League teams is Western Sydney, and I'm pretty sure they didn't do very well last year. And I wonder how much that incredible Eastern European crowd that they've got at their games, plays a factor.
It's huge. And what was really interesting was the UFC, because they found a way to run fights through quarantine where there were no crowds, and the sounds were different. When you hear someone get kicked or punched, you could hear the visceral tones of ribs cracking or, knuckles hitting skull. And you realize that the crowd really absorbed some of that noise. And then the fighters were different. Like, a lot of them performed differently. There's fighters like Conor McGregor who really thrive off the crowd energy. So they're at a disadvantage because they don't have that energy to feed off. But then there's others who are intimidated by the crowd who thrived because they didn't have that distraction and they could just be a lot more focused. So it's a huge influence over activity because there's an energy to it. So yeah, I found that really interesting just to observe in those different arenas. And that's why I think it's really important in your own personal practice that you explore music and try to incorporate it, because if you've ever done I think we touched on it last time, I went to Costa Rica and did ayahuasca ceremonies at a facility called Rhythmia, and the music there makes it. It's in fact the icaros, or the songs that the shaman and their helpers sing, they say are almost more important than the ayahuasca or the plant medicine itself to create the tone, like to create the mood and the vibe. So the music there was unbelievable. And it's just sad, I think, in our culture. It's probably a bit different in New Zealand because I know a lot of Kiwis that can sing fantastically, whereas over here in Australia, we don't tend to sing very much at all. And when you hear someone singing live in person, it's beautiful. And I sort of wish there was more of that. And the only singing I can remember as a child was occasionally my grandparents took me to church but it was horrific. I hated it. It was like it was unpleasant on the ears, and there was no soul to it. I don't know, which is again ironic, because
it's all about soul.
Singing about God or something that's meant to be heartfelt, but it felt monotone and like a drone, like it was unpleasant. So
it's funny you bring up. It's funny you bring up the singing, like New Zealand versus Australia. Like, I think it's really wonderful now that Australia is starting to put out some of the Aboriginal songs and things at the start of events, and they're creating these First Nations rugby league teams and things, and getting them to do their various war dances or war cries or whatever it is. It's something I never really realised about New Zealand. Growing up early on, I used to get up far too early, so my parents would just basically be like, "Go entertain yourself," and they'd have Māori culture competitions on the telly on a Sunday morning, and so I'd just sit there watching these things. The choices were that or watching church, ironically, as we were just talking about. So I sat there watching Māori culture groups heaps. I was lucky enough to go to a primary school. It was a Catholic primary school, but we had a marae next door and got really into kapa haka. So my whole formative years of schooling was also immersed in this sort of Māori singing and that sort of cultural stuff. And it's amazing now when you flick on the TV and watch All Blacks do the haka, or this awesome band from New Zealand, 660, have just done one of their songs I've redone in Māori, and Stan Walker as well, who I think he won or got second on Australian Idol. He as well has made a whole album in Te Reo Māori and started singing these songs in Māori, and just that hits you right in the heart. And so I think that's what correlates to now seeing in Australia the Aboriginal songs coming to the fore and things like that is really awesome to see. And when it comes to your kids, Aaron, it might be something that the singing does and that movement and sound does become a way of their life.
My family weren't musical, so there wasn't a great deal of singing, but it's something I'd love to have more of and practice and get into, to be honest. And one of the things that drew me to taking up the didgeridoo just recently was a mate of mine was explaining to me, who can play quite well, and he's learned from Indigenous teachers. This particular mate's also very much into breathwork. So he was explaining to me from a scientific breathwork perspective the value in using a breathwork instrument like the didgeridoo for people who suffer from sleep apnea, asthma. There's all these terrific benefits from practicing a wind instrument like that, because it tones your tongue and your throat, and your lungs are being exercised, and it also changes your blood chemistry, because you're dealing with sort of long exhales. So you tend to build up CO2 in your blood, which alters your brain state, and after a period of playing, it becomes trancy, where, because you haven't been breathing in the same, in the typical pattern, you're expelling a lot of air, and you're taking these short inhales, like so you're not sort of sucking in as much oxygen, and the CO2 builds up in your blood, and you get these euphoric psychedelic states start to happen. And he was explaining to me, as you get more advanced into the practice, that the noises that they can generate, they can play with these rhythms, but then those noises, the really eerie sounds that start to come through, are like, it's like trauma release, and these internal expressions that are uniquely yours just start coming out. I haven't sort of gotten to that place yet, but that's what attracted me to it, because I thought, holy crap, I had no idea that there was so much depth in this instrument. And then when you start to hear how many sounds it can make, it's just a log, it's just a stick, how does it make that many sounds? So the interplay between the human and the stick is pretty fascinating too, that you can get that many sounds just from your lips and a stick. So yeah, I've been just trying to, practice 10, 15 minutes a day. It's very frustrating initially, but yeah, it's a goal of mine for 2021 is to learn the didgeridoo. So I'm sucking right now, which is great.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. It's pretty amazing. You mentioned the rhythmia stuff, and then again with the breath work and the didgeridoo and the sounds and what starts to flow through, and like even yoga practice, they often will have the music on, and it's all about controlling the breath through the movement. And some of the most powerful Wim Hof experiences I've had. One really good one was lying by a waterfall. Another really good one has been lying by the ocean. And then two powerful ones have been in a group setting with very good, intense music. And even if people want to go on Instagram to Wim Hof's page, he's got like a little 10-minute guided session, and it's got great music to it. You can get some powerful experiences just from 3 rounds with guided with that. But again, it's fascinating how quick and deep you can get to those states when you've got that sort of, I don't know, trancey or committed sound, and how much better the feeling can be when you're doing it in a group or with nature. It's amazing how energetically and I guess spiritually something like the breath and sounds can have on us as a being.
Absolutely. Yeah. Breathwork, I think, is the safest, drug-free way to access altered states of consciousness. And like you say, 10, 15 minutes, you can really tap into a whole nother side of your own psyche. And, the science is, they're studying this stuff in depth now, and they're showing that those happy brain chemicals that are released, the serotonin and the dopamine and the oxytocin and the neuroadrenaline that are activated, which, they're all things similar to when you take drugs that get activated. So you've got this pharmacy in your own brain that is triggered through the breath holds and conscious, voluntarily stressing your respiratory system and creating these altered states, which then shifts your perspective away from just the analytical brain, the analytical mind that is constantly worrying and assessing, and all of a sudden you access these lucid states. And if you're beside a waterfall, I can only imagine nature heightens the experience because it has its own frequency and its own sort of resonance from the trees and the water and everything else. So I think that interplay would be is beautiful, and it makes it even better. So it's just a nice little vacation from your own mental stress and worry that is really hard in this day and age to take off or put down, because we're so busy and that monkey mind is just non-stop having to make calculations and having to stress and worry and all the notifications pinging off every 3 seconds. So just to take 15 minutes to go to another place is a beautiful practice, and it's safe. You can just back off if it's not working out for you, which is a bit different than dropping a tab of acid or eating a pile of mushrooms. I mean, you can't get off that trip. You're on that trip. You gotta ride that snake. Whereas breath, you can just back off.
What I find fascinating is I'll get to an end of the day when I've done breathwork before I got out of bed, or especially when I start to build momentum, and probably the downside of it is it's lasting momentum. So it's not until sort of 2-3 weeks later when you've all of a sudden gone out of that pattern and forgotten to keep doing the breathwork that you kind of go, I'm not feeling so good. Oh yeah, I'm not doing breathwork anymore. But you've had this roll on. But yeah,
Yes.
Get to the end of the day and go, like you said, I haven't been worrying about the minutiae today. I've just been having a great day, enjoying the moment, doing the things that are, for some reason yesterday were bothering me, but today they're not.
Yes.
It's amazing, like you said, that mind chemistry that we've all got inside us can just function a little bit better, and a state of being can just be nicer from something simple as 10 minutes, 15 minutes breathing. It's remarkable, and it's funny when you forget about it for a little while, how you go, oh yeah, that was working. I better get back and doing that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think I like to do it in the mornings
Yeah, me
when I
too.
wake up. It just sets the tone for the day, and it gives you, um, because that little bit of adrenaline in the morning from the breath holds, which gives you that little bit of fight or flight initially, and then your body counterbalances that with the parasympathetic nervous system, which brings you that euphoric relaxed state. So you get this really beautiful blend of a little bit of a pep up, so you're energized, but you're also euphorically relaxed all at once. So it's a nice way to start your day and just prime the system. It just up regulates your system, and then away you go. Throw a cup of coffee on that and you're ready to run through walls.
Oh yeah. If anyone wants to blow their mind, that Agrifforama podcast I was talking about was with Lex Friedman, and they went real deep, but yeah, they sort of touched on the effects of MDMA, and it's exactly that massive dopamine kick, but at the same time a massive serotonin kick, and that's why they think that somebody's so plastic and malleable, and why he's sort of postulating that the MDMA assisted psychotherapy might be so powerful over those coming days after that experience. So, the future, or the near future, is quite interesting in the way we understand the brain and the firings and wirings of this thing that we know bugger all about. We know some markers, we know that they're in there, but where they go and what they do is really fascinating. And it's cool that someone in the neuroscience realm can have this deep 3-hour conversation with someone in the artificial intelligence realm, and see the two worlds collide, and what's going to happen going forward. And I'll get quite a kick out of Andrew Huberman, because he always talks about the retina. So for me, I'm just like, yeah, that's the brain. That's what I look at every day.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what these guys are, showing with their science is that you've got essentially a pharmacy in your own brain, and that you can access certain neurochemicals consciously. And, and guys like Wim Hof have overturned the idea that was in science for a long time, that things are autonomic, that you can't consciously control things like your own body temperature, or just decide to be happy and just dump some serotonin into your bloodstream so that you feel euphoric and happy. Well, yeah, actually you can. And in 10 or 15 minutes with some controlled breathing, you can voluntarily stress your system to induce these brain chemicals to flood your system, and you can make yourself feel terrific in a very short window of time. So it's great news for people who suffer anxiety and depression, and which is, it touches almost everyone these days. And I think most people are anxious on some level, just with the speed of the world. So the doctors that do prescribe lots and lots of these sedatives and various medications for depression and anxiety, it's giving people an alternative and an option that they can do some self-care and take care of themselves. And you don't have to do it every day, but if you feel called to it, great. Generally, when you're feeling the most stressed and lousy is probably when you sort of want to do these things. And the way I sort of divide the breath work up is into two categories of the up regulation and the down regulation. So it's nice to do the Wim Hof in the mornings because you want to kind of up regulate and prime your system. But then in the evenings, I don't want to do that. I want to bring myself down. So I'll revert to, like the box breathing or something like that, which is incredibly calming and you slow down. And, or even the didgeridoo, I find does that. It slows me right down and my breath gets longer. And and softer, and and it's good to wind down before you go to bed. So having choice, you can up regulate or you can down regulate, is very empowering. And I think we need to get this out there so that people have more tools for their own health, and maybe it can even replace to an extent some of the pharmaceuticals that people rely on, and have side effects and addictive qualities, especially with those with those ones that have those morphine, the ones that really bomb you out.
Yeah,
the opioids.
And with Jordan Peterson was the benzodiazepines on a long time. Was that Lex or was that Tim Ferriss? One of them was interviewing.
Yeah, Peterson had that.
Yeah, one of them was interviewing his brother-in-law. I think it must have been Tim Ferriss, and yeah, he spoke because this guy ended up looking deeply into benzodiazepines, and he described it really well about this sort of down regulation in the system and reliance, and how it then basically you get categorized as crazy or addicted. And I was like, oh, that's rough.
Yeah.
So user beware with those ones, and obviously it's a whole spectrum of things, and sometimes the tool fits, and other times it's not so only useful in the short term and has consequences. Like everything has a reaction to it. So yeah,
it's fascinating that they're not new technologies. These are ancient. Like the Wim Hof is adapted from the Tumo breathing, and the Tibetans, and these ancient civilizations have used these practices to stay warm in the cold just through necessity, because they live in harsh Himalayan snowy mountain climates. And so they're really ancient systems that have been popularized into modern culture, which is great, because we know there's a history there, and they've worked for many generations. So it's great that there's a renaissance of these really effective ancient tools that people knew about ages ago. But on another level, I feel like we're all kind of morons. Modern civilization is kind of moronic in a way that we forgot and lost all this great stuff that we had ages ago, and now we're just rediscovering it, and everyone's like, wow, look at this stuff. And these third world countries are like, yeah, we've had that for 3,000 years, so nothing new.
yeah yoga's the same. You're like, oh yeah, you go and do a yoga class, oh yeah, that's really good. That's really good. It's amazing. Right. So what I'll get you to leave us with, Aaron, is
yes,
because last time we found out what had been keeping you in flow. I think if you could leave us with what you're focusing on to stay in flow for 2021, man. Like you said, it's a open opportunity, blank slate to put a few more layers of paint on that masterpiece. What are you sort of directing yourself forward with to be in that flow?
To stay in a flow state. The flow states come and go for me. So I take them when they're there, and I do my best to create those flow states. For me, it's having some discipline around my practices, especially when I really got in, when I really was cracking along with my movement, meditation, and breath work. It was after I had kids and I had the least amount of time, and I found that those constraints made me ruthless with the little windows of time that I had. There was no mucking around, no procrastinating, and it activated a ruthless intensity that I'd never had before. So it was only after I lost all my time that I got really ruthless with my time. So I've learned from that, and now I have more space. I'm still putting these boundaries and constraints on myself to make sure that I stay creative and I have that creative pressure on myself. So setting goals, giving myself deadlines, putting that pressure on myself, I think is key for me. That creates flow state. I need pressure and urgency to perform. That's just how I am. So if I have a year to do something, I'll leave it until day 364 and then try to do it. So I'm trying to break things down into chunks and give myself, right, this week I've got to do X. By the end of this month, I want to do X, and just chunk it like that. So that's how I'm approaching it. And then, chunk my day down into units, okay, I'm going to get X, Y, and Z done before lunch, and then have lunch and enjoy myself and not worry. Then I'm going to do, my next activity. So yeah, for me, those constraints, those boundaries, and the discipline to follow through on it, and just revisiting my goals, get my journal out in the mornings, and just check back in on my goals and what I want to achieve and why I'm doing it, and revisit that, and a little mission statement or a little motto or something to keep yourself going. I find very helpful, and try to remember who it is I'm trying to serve, and the people I want to help, and why I'm making this change. Being a lawyer was all about me. It was all, what could I get out of it, and how much money could I make, and how much social status could I get, and how much recognition would I get. Whereas now it's, who can I help? How can I help? What do I have to offer the world? And how do I get that out there? So reorientating my focus towards service is a new theme, and mixing that, converging that with some boundaries and constraints, I hope will keep me in flow.
Epic, mate. Thank you so much. Obviously, I'm going to direct everybody to the YouTube page and your Instagram page again. Be sure to touch base with Aaron and myself, and it's going to be an awesome watch this year, man. And I love connecting with you across the Tasman Sea and through the interwebs, and hopefully one day this bubble opens up and the world gets a plan going forward. Yes. and we can connect in person finally, which would be fantastic.
We will. Very grateful. Yeah, you're doing great work, and thanks for sharing your podcast and all the great guests and all the great information. So yeah, it's a pleasure to catch up, and I hope to see you in person soon.
Awesome. I'll press stop.